to wake up. Come on, YouTube. Don't let me down. Don't let me
Why,
down.
why do they take so long to wake up?
Well, it's just like I use a multi-streaming thing,
Ah,
and here it comes. And yeah, so the YouTube's always last. Like Facebook goes quicker, Periscope
interesting.
goes quicker. YouTube is the last to join the ethers.
Ah,
And yeah, it's just always been that way. The person I am talking to off screen is Ryan Mendez. Guys, first of all, this is the Sound of Revolution interview series where I wanted to talk to musicians and authors and activists and other creative types about their thoughts on 2020, their take on the world. I was hoping to do a lot of these in person, but given what's going on in the world, we're going to continue with the series, and most of these, if not all of them, will be done remotely, which is still cool. It still works. And my guest today is Ryan Mendez. Ryan played in Yellowcard, a band I'm sure a lot of you remember. They were great. And so you guys disbanded in 2017. First of all, Ryan, welcome to the show. Thanks for being here.
thank you. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
So, well, let's start pre-Yellowcard actually, because I
Okay.
know we were kind of talking off mic, and we both, I feel like we were both kind of part of the same era. I was just a show attendee and a listener more than anything else. You were actually playing, but so you started. When did you start playing in bands?
Um, Probably honestly in high school, probably when I was 15, 16 maybe. And I think at that point I figured out pretty quickly that that's the only thing I wanted to do, was play
Mm-hmm.
music. And so, the band that kind of really got me going, was a band called Staring Back, which was my old band before Yellowcard. And that I think we started that when I was about 17, and then we really kind of started pushing forward with that. Started doing a lot of touring, always playing to probably 2 to 3 people every night. Big crowds. It was just a tough grind, and made friends with the guys in Yellowcard when they actually tried to come and get signed to the local label that my band was on, and just maintained a friendship with them for multiple years, and did some touring with them, in Staring Back as well. And they, at some point, August of '05, I think, they called me up. They needed somebody to fill in on guitar. They were having some issues with their guitarist. I did, and it just basically kind of became permanent. And
So
so,
where was this? Like I know you said you were born in Detroit, but you spent a lot of your childhood in Santa Barbara. So where was Staring Back out of? Like where are you guys
Santa
based?
Barbara.
So this was Santa Barbara. This was
Yeah,
all Southern California.
yeah, all
And
SoCal.
man, so a lot of like the bands that I kind of was friends with and whatnot. I grew up in Pittsburgh, which like a place like that, it's like New York is drivable, Jersey is drivable, DC's drivable, Philly's drivable, whatever. But Santa Barbara, it's like you're really far out there as far as the
Yeah,
West Coast. And I feel that now as a comic. I mean, I fly more than I ever did, and it's a totally different situation now, which I'm thrilled about. But so how was that like getting in the van? And I mean, you guys literally had to drive cross country.
yeah. So obviously,
Uh-oh. We got a little freezing here.
oh, we still there?
Yeah, I'm
Okay,
still there. We
all
lost
right.
you for a second. So just
Sorry.
yeah, no problem. It's just
Um,
things are crazy.
they sure are, and I think also just, everyone's at home, so obviously I'm sure the internet is slightly more taxed. But
Indeed.
yeah, so a lot of just SoCal stuff, really. We would obviously do local shows in Santa Barbara and the kind of surrounding suburbs, Ventura, Camarillo, Thousand Oaks, etc. But trying to get into LA and Orange County, etc., that's kind of like, those are kind of the areas to sort of.
Uh-oh. Looks like we're losing Ryan again.
You.
All right, so we got you back. You're cutting in and out a little bit. We got most of that answer. So it was mostly SoCal stuff.
Yeah. I'm just checking, make sure that my. Okay. Is the audio cutting out when the video's out too?
Yeah, it's both audio and video. Now you're
Okay.
lagging a little bit, but we're getting the audio. Um,
Okay.
we'll just do we'll work through. I think you're coming in now.
Okay.
Um,
So yeah,
so
mostly SoCal stuff, and then obviously, trying as best we can, or best we could, to get nationally as well. Although back then, before the internet was kind of really what it is now, it was a little more difficult. But just the grind of van touring back then was just, man, it was something special.
Well, the way I remember it, because yeah, like you're saying, the internet was around, but it wasn't what it is now. You know,
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, there were like some, and the way I remember it is there was like a lot of message boards and a lot of like sites that people like to go to find out about shows, but there was still very much the old-fashioned way of you would see a flyer. There was a venue that you like to go to that you trusted because you knew that they would bring in bands that you would like.
Oh yeah,
that
absolutely.
sort of thing. And those were the places that you would try to get booked at if you were a band. So what was the label that Yellowcard was trying to get signed to when you met them?
So it was a label based out of Santa Barbara called Lobster Records. So being, the label, we were one of the only bands actually in Santa Barbara that was on the label. They had a few other national bands. And Yellowcard with an older singer, came out west to try to get signed to that label. It didn't quite work out. Their sound was way different at that point. But we made friends with the guys when they came into town and kept in touch with them. And
Oh, there it goes again.
cheers.
All right, we lost a lot of that. I think you're cutting in and out, unfortunately. Are you there?
Yep, I'm still here. Can you
All
hear
right.
me?
Yeah,
Sorry.
yeah, it's cutting. Oh, there's only so much you can do. It's just
Yeah.
in
Jeez.
these times.
Where did it cut out?
It cut out when you were describing Lobster Records and you were saying that you were the only Santa Barbara band that was on the label.
Barbara bands. Most of the other bands were national. And Yellowcard with an older singer came out west to try to get signed to the label. They sounded a lot different, and the label wasn't really that into it. Although my band made friends with them, and we actually ended up touring with them in Florida when they had gotten their new singer, Ryan, who is the singer that ended up being the lead singer, obviously. And with him kind of came a change in sound. And I remember when we first played with them in Florida, I called Steve, the owner of the label, and I was like, hey, you need to sign this band now because they're going to be a thing. And he did. And then they were. But all that time, I remember having a physical atlas on the dash of the van. I didn't even have a cell phone when we started touring. It was just like, it was such a different world than it is now. It would be easier in some ways, but just the price of gas alone, I don't know how a band would do van touring now.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, I wonder that too. A lot of my friends that are in bands, I don't know how they do it. The ones that do it professionally, they're hired guns.
Yeah, for sure. That's the way to do it. Yep.
Yeah, like that's what what most of them do. It's like they're hired guns for an established act that kind of takes care of everything.
Right.
And then during their downtime, they do their own music and they tour and record with that.
Sure. Yeah.
So during their downtime from touring, they get to tour.
Yeah. That's a good downtime.
It's the life, man. That's
yeah.
the life.
Yeah.
But all right. So let's talk quick. You getting into Yellowcard then? So it's 2005. Was your current band still around?
Yes, although it was kind of on its way out. I had gotten to the point where there were a couple of the members of the band that didn't seem like they were quite on the same page in terms of motivation and trying to make things work, because we were all trying as hard as we could to make the band work. And I had basically
foiled again. All right. Ryan, we lost you for a little bit there.
Is it back?
You are back now. Yes, you are back.
Man, I'm sorry. I don't know.
No, it's okay. Here. I mean, it's just, sometimes connectivity, there's only so much you can do.
Yeah.
I will edit this a good bit when the audio podcast goes out, at least.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I apologize. I wish my connection was being more reliable. Where did it cut out? Did it?
It cut out. You were getting tired of the band. People weren't motivated. And,
yeah. A couple of the guys didn't seem to be quite on the same page, and so I had pretty much already made the decision to move on. And then I got the call from the Yellowcard guys. It actually happened because I called Sean, the violinist, to invite him to my wedding, randomly enough, and he called me back and he's like, "So I can't come to your wedding, but do you want to come to Japan to fill in on guitar for a festival in front of 60,000 people, and I was like, okay. And
Now
then
that didn't conflict with your wedding, did it?
yeah. Well, funny enough, yeah. Thankfully, it didn't. Although
Okay, I was gonna say.
yeah, it
It's like
didn't.
I know you got a wedding plan, but
Yeah,
alternative thing here. You
yeah.
might want to say yes.
Right. So thankfully, I was still able to do it. Although I ended up having to leave to go on tour in Canada with them, like I think 2 days after the wedding. So technically, my wife and I still never went on a honeymoon, even to this day. So I started touring right away.
Wow.
And then it was starting. I was just filling in at first because they were trying to work things out with the guitarist. They didn't know how it was going. And then after a couple months, it seemed that it kind of wasn't going to work out. And so then they asked me to be a full-time member.
Nice.
That was fall of '05.
So like this was like that would have been pre-Ocean Avenue, correct?
No, that would have been
That
right
would have
after.
right after. Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So it was quite a difficult time to join the band as a new member because you're joining into a band that had kind of blown up in the last couple of years, replacing a member that was pretty beloved by the fans. Obviously, fans having no idea what was going on behind the scenes with whatever their conflicts were, and someone else pops in, and it was quite an interesting thing to come into.
How were you received?
At first, I think people were just more mad about the situation, and there wasn't a whole lot of public knowledge about like the details. Like they were keeping everything under wraps, understandably so. I mean, they wanted to keep things kind of behind the scenes and not air all the conflict. But at first, people were pretty bummed out that I think more that the other guy was gone as opposed to like not liking me specifically.
Mm-hmm.
But fans seemed to welcome me decently quickly. I think I remember after a couple of months meeting some fans outside shows, and they were like, "Hey, just want to let you know we really think you're doing a great job, and we're here to support you." So it was cool.
Now, did you just play guitar, or did you do backing vocals too, or what was the anatomy there?
I just played lead guitar at first, although over the years I slowly started doing more and more backing vocals. When I joined the band, the bass player at the time sang a ton of their background vocals. His name was Pete. He's a phenomenal singer, and between him and Sean, the violinist, they both sang two additional, two background vocalists in addition to the lead singer. So they had everything pretty much covered. And then after a couple of years, Pete was not in the band anymore. I started to sing a lot more background vocals, and then the last multiple years of the band, I was singing a whole bunch of background vocals.
So, what happened with the band? You guys disbanded in 2017. What kind of led to all that?
We kind of there were a couple of things. One, a couple of us were, myself included, we were kind of didn't want to tour full time anymore for kind of what things had turned out to be. We kind of saw the rock music world sort of taking a turn with lack of MTV, lack of airplay on the radio, lack of people buying albums, and it became more and more tough to make a living doing it without touring, 11 months a year. And it just kind of wore on us. Really.
So you were doing 11 months a year.
There were a few years we were doing 10 to 11 months. Other years we would do 9 months. It was relentless, and it wears on you a lot, And it's funny because you have like family members or maybe some people who are not quite as close to the music scene, and they're like, "Oh, well, you're in a band that was on MTV and you're touring full time, so you must be a millionaire. So you're doing great." And it's like, no, that's not how it works at all. Actually, there's no record sales anymore. You do everything from your live show, and when you're touring that much, it wears on you, honestly.
Oh, I'm sure, man. I mean, like when I was a full-time road comic, the most I ever did, 11 months, I think 40 weeks a year was where I think one year I did like 42, 43. I was never in like the 45 range. So
still brutal though, It
is. The difference is like, typically a band, it's like you guys just go, you're on like every night and stuff. For a comic, it's like you're more at the mercy of like a comedy club schedule.
Sure.
So you'll have like 3 nights on and then you're just off, and you either just go home or you might not have a home. So you just kind of go to, if you know somebody who has a couch, a couple states over from where you're going to be next, you would just go there.
Sure.
And then do whatever, like go
Just
to an
piece it
open mic.
together.
Like if it's like, oh, okay, I got a club week in Chicago. Then my next club week is in, Indianapolis, but I'm going to go spend a couple nights with a buddy in Detroit. And while I'm in Detroit, I'm going to check out the scene there, and I'm going to showcase at Club X so I can maybe get booked there for next year.
Absolutely.
And that's the life, and it was fun for a while. And then it got to be, I kind of felt like a hamster in a wheel and came out to LA. But, so you guys didn't want to tour full time anymore. And,
Right.
But when was it, I mean, and I don't know what it's like to be in a band, really. I mean, I played in bands for fun in high school. That doesn't really count. But how did you guys make the call where it's like, okay, we don't not just want to tour full time anymore, but as far as us collaborating together, this has run its course? Like, how do you make a call like that?
I think it was more like we came to a decision that we didn't want to do it full time anymore, touring wise, and I think some bands can do this, but we aren't the kind of band and kind of people that wanted to just say, okay, well, maybe we'll just do, a couple festivals every year and just kind of do it here and there. We were kind of never really like that. We were always on, always going for it. And so it's like, we're either doing it or we're not. And we felt like it was the best choice to decide not to. And we were split. The couple of the guys definitely did not want it to end. They wanted to keep touring and playing, and a couple of us wanted to stop. And obviously we don't want to stop playing music, but we just didn't want to be on the road away from family that much, and
well, which side of the fence were you on? I mean, I think you kind of hinted, but what side of the fence were you on?
I wanted to stop. I didn't want to stop playing music. Obviously, that's by far the thing I missed the most about it is playing shows and interacting with fans. Of course, it's the reason we were out there doing it. So of course, that's the thing I missed the most. But I didn't want to be gone that much anymore. I just didn't want to. And
were some of the other guys married too, or were you the only one?
Yeah, no. So our violinist, the one who I originally called to invite him to my wedding, he's married and he has a kid as well, or he actually has 2 children now. But he had 1 at the time, and he was just like, dude, I don't want to be away from my family anymore. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, obviously, I can understand being married. Neither one of us wanted to tour that much anymore. It was tough. It's not like, all right, we're done. Kind of just throw it up. It's like, no, we don't. I mean, this was our whole lives for a long time, and we loved playing. We loved the fans. I think it was just the right time.
Mm-hmm. So post Yellowcard, it's now around 2017. So what did you start doing next?
I had been over the last, I don't know, probably the last year or two of the band, I'd gotten super into photography. I actually shot the cover of our last album, and I found that it was a really good creative outlet that kind of satisfied me in the same way as making music did. And it was something that I could just do by myself. Didn't have to collaborate with anyone. I just got to do exactly what I wanted. And I kind of started out when the band was ending feeling like I wanted to do something in the future with that. But the main thing I wanted to do was just kind of take a break. So I definitely took a break that lasted multiple months to just kind of process everything. Took longer than I was expecting to kind of feel like I was ready to move on afterwards, because even though I was one of the ones that wanted to stop doing it, it still took a toll,
Yeah.
And so over the course of that time, I kind of made the decision that as much as I love photography and I still will do it, that I actually should probably continue to try to do music related stuff. And over the course of the time that the band was active, I had been doing a lot of production and mixing work. I actually did a lot of stuff for the band as well, like a lot of B-sides. We did an entire acoustic album that I produced and mixed. And so I decided to pursue that full time. I probably made that decision, I guess, right when the band was ending, and I knew I was going to kind of pick it up, when I felt I had sort of grieved and processed everything, if that makes sense.
Sure. No, totally. It makes complete sense. I mean, I can't imagine, and if you don't want to go into it, you don't have to, but I mean, is there any kind of bad blood? Because I can only imagine how hard it is for everybody, but especially the people that really didn't want to stop, where it's like, sorry, the dream's over because we're not all in anymore. You know,
Right.
I mean, I can only imagine how brutal that is. And I know bands go through it every day.
Right.
But I mean, I still can only imagine, even though, I have a lot of friends who are musicians who have talked to me about it, but still it's like, I can't even wrap my head around it. Cause it's like, I mean, other comedians have said this before. I think most famously, Mark Maron said it. It's like, we don't get to quit ourselves. So it's like, we're never faced with that issue.
Yeah.
Well, we're breaking up. We're back. I thought of another tag. We're back together. Who knew?
Right. Yep. I would say, I mean, I still, and we'll get into this obviously for a second, but I mean, I work now with our singer Ryan. He and I have a project, and he was one of the ones that wanted to keep doing it. So I'm still friends with everybody. Whether or not everyone else is friends with everyone else, I'm not gonna comment on.
Sure. Oh man, he cut out right there. It's like the Yellowcard's gods didn't want him to go into specifics. There you go. You're back. Wait, nope, you're lost again.
Come on.
All right, you're back. You're back.
Got it?
You're
okay.
Back. Yeah. Okay.
Where did it cut out?
It cut out right when you said I'm not going to comment on the other guy. It was the Yellowcard gods were like, don't talk about it. They were like, don't talk about it, Ryan.
I mean, I can say it pretty easily. It's just I'm still friends with everybody. Some of the people are friends. Some of the other people aren't really friends with each other. It's to be expected. Not everyone gets along great. Some people get along better than others. But I'm working on a project with our singer, and he was one of the ones that wanted to keep doing it. And I'm one of the ones that didn't want to keep doing it. So clearly, we're okay. Whether or not the relationships between all the other guys, I can't speak to. But it's a relationship. It's like you're married to multiple other people all at the same time for years and years and years. And so there's going to be varying different degrees of how well people get along and don't get along, and I guess maybe that's a good diplomatic answer for you.
No, dude, that's awesome. And so now you're doing like recording and you're doing mixing. So when you started getting into all this, like, where was home at this point? Were you back in Santa Barbara or?
No, at the time the band ended, my wife and I were actually living in Pasadena.
Okay.
She got a job working at. She actually does architecture. She does sustainable architecture. And she got a job at a firm that was in Pasadena at the time, although now they've moved downtown. So we were living in Pasadena, and now we are actually based in Burbank.
So we're still kind of neighbors. We were almost super neighbors.
Oh yeah.
I live in Pasadena.
Yeah. I figured you lived there, based on things that you've said. And yeah, so now we live like super close to Flappers, actually, like really close.
Nice.
Like we walked home from that last show that I saw you guys at.
So that's a good transition, because that's how I was going to transition into politics. But I want to ask you one quick question, just for my own sake. Because again, like, we came up around the same time, and I listened to you guys and a lot of the bands from that era. Was there anyone you really enjoyed, like other bands, like anyone you really enjoyed touring with in particular?
Yeah, so there was a band called Over It that also ended up being signed to Lobster Records. They were also super tight with the Punchline guys as well.
Okay.
And they were some of the best guys, and we toured with them a whole bunch. Of course.
I remember that name. I couldn't. Yeah. I don't remember the sound, but I do remember seeing that at the very least on a flyer or something.
Yeah, they were like they were some of our best friends back in the day. They ended up kind of rebranding themselves as a band called Runner afterwards.
Okay.
And pretty much all the same guys. And yeah, they were some of the best dudes. I still talk to a lot of them, and they were so much fun to tour with.
Mm-hmm. So you came out to a live Jimmy Dore show.
I did.
And did you have a good time?
Had a great time, yeah. And that was actually the third time that we've seen Jimmy.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so the first one we saw a few years ago, actually, I think that was the first show that Cenk Uygur came and was live with him as well. I'm pretty sure.
I remember that show.
Yeah,
I remember that show. I was there. I think I opened with stand up on that show.
Yep, you did. Yeah, and my wife and I were actually sitting right up front, like right on the stage, basically on the left side.
Cool.
Night. Yeah, and then we saw Jimmy do at one of his stand-up sets in the smaller room at Flappers, probably year and a half ago, and then this recent show again. My wife and I are huge fans for sure.
So how long you been into the Jimmy Dore show? Was it like pre my era or?
I don't think so because
Okay.
so we kind of both got into it following the last election. My wife she had kind of gotten into TYT, and that's kind of where we both discovered Jimmy was on Young Turks, and then through him we discovered you and discovered Graham and discovered kind of the current handful of kind of awesome progressive independent media voices that we kind of go to these days.
Yeah, man. In many ways, we were in a similar ship because, you know, the Jimmy Dore show was around for like about a decade before I was part of it.
Oh, wow.
So, you know, like I was the new guy on campus for a little while too. And, you know, some people were like, where were the other contributors and what have you. But what got you into Jimmy Dore specifically, politically, kind of like were you a big Bernie supporter in 2016 or what was going on there?
So I was kind of, I was a little more apolitical back then.
Okay.
To sum it up, I grew up in a Christian conservative household, like big time. But I kind of didn't really pay attention politically back in the day. Like I was like, we were Rush Limbaugh fans and we were, you know, we hated Bill Clinton and blah, blah, blah. Right. You know, you don't question anything when you're a kid. So I kind of stopped identifying with that and also not really paying attention to politics as I got into my 20s. I kind of sort of started feeling more kind of libertarian-esque in my mid to late 20s, just kind of sick of government in general. That kind of ended, and I have been basically just identifying as an independent for quite a while. And in the 2016 election, I mean, everyone was sort of paying attention. Everyone was hearing what was going on, but I wasn't really like super focused on it. I knew that I had absolutely no intention of voting for either of those people because they were both ridiculous. And after Trump won, I think it was like, oh my goodness, like I can't believe that just happened. And that was right around the time that my wife had been watching the Young Turks a lot. And that kind of really catapulted me into the political world in a more focused way than I had ever been. And but kind of really reorganized what I consider to be like my political alignment and priorities. Mainly to be, I think the thing that really kind of affected me a lot was Cenk just always pushing about money in politics and getting money out of politics. And it's so funny because I remember way back in the day, people talking about campaign finance reform. And I kind of remember like, yeah, that's a thing, but whatever, like it's not a sexy issue, you know? And I never really realized like how important that is. And then when I started watching the Young Turks, something just clicked with me. It's like, well, wait a second. You can just literally bribe politicians to do whatever you want. Why? How come everyone isn't flipping out about this and how come this is okay? And that kind of turn just really catapulted me into like, well, wait a second. Like, you know, the old cliche, like if you're not outraged, you're not paying attention. It's like, well, yeah. It's true. It's just a matter of if like what happens to make you start paying attention to a certain level, you know?
Right. Well, I remember for me, as far as like staying on the theme of money in politics, I got, you know, I used to be like, well, the Democrats, they're the clearer glass and blah, blah, blah. I mean, I was a Kucinich supporter in 2008, but when I knew he wasn't going to win, I moved over to Obama and I was like, all right, Obama's a fair compromise. I'm sure he's going to do some good. And then I remember I saw this like chart and I don't remember where exactly I saw it, but it was all the donor money. And I looked at it and I was just like, wait a second, Wall Street gives money to both of them. They're giving money. They give money to the Republicans and the Democrats too. And
the same people. I know.
Yeah, the same people. They're giving money to both these. So they basically get whatever they want no matter what because they just bought both of them. Yep. This doesn't seem fair.
Yeah. And it's funny because like there's no way that I didn't hear that idea or, you know, someone talking about that before and just it's like sometimes you're just something doesn't hit you in a certain way and then all of a sudden it just does and you're like, oh my God, like what? This is really how this system works? Like it's truly unbelievable. And what's funny about what you're saying about supporting Obama in 2008, so that was kind of when I still considered myself, I think I was actually a registered libertarian at that point. I kind of laugh to myself these days about how growing up I was super like, I considered myself a Republican, even though I didn't even really know anything about anything, but just because my household was. But when Obama was running and when he got elected, I was like, oh, Obama, he's a Democrat, blah, blah, blah. Like, so I hated Obama from the right. And then I just went straight from that, jumped right over him, and now hate him from the left. Like, it's like there was no time where I was like, oh, yeah, Obama. It's like, nope, I've hated him from both sides. Like,
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, was Yellowcard a Christian band? Were they?
No,
okay.
Definitely
I
not.
didn't think so, but I wasn't sure.
Okay. They always kind of like made an effort to have the lyrical message be, try to be a little bit more positive and uplifting in general.
Sure.
We definitely had a big following with a lot of Christians, a lot of Mormons for sure. Just because I think like Ryan always made sure not to swear in his lyrics and
okay.
We just kind of felt like that resonated with the music the best, and just kind of having a general, more hopeful, uplifting kind of vibe. But definitely not a Christian band. Although I know Ryan did grow up a Christian for sure.
Well, I know like in the kind of pop punk scene, like there were a lot of Christian bands, and a lot of them like you didn't really know, like you just didn't. I mean, you knew who they were, but you didn't really know, like unless they told you, because a lot of them weren't like. I mean, some of them were more. It was more very clear in their lyrics and stuff like that. But some of them, they were just, and I even know like there were some bands, I mean, I'm not going to get into specifics, where it's like, all of a sudden they're Christian because their pastor knew somebody at Tooth and Nail Records.
Yeah.
We're Christian. We take our faith really seriously.
Yeah. Well, I definitely considered myself a Christian growing up, and I really loved all the Tooth and Nail stuff. I was a big MXPX fan back in the day, and I remember they would like, I can't remember if they were one of the bands that would be like, we're not a Christian band, we're Christians in a band, etc. It's like there's a big difference to some of the bands. They would say there's a big difference. But it's fun because I still definitely look back on that time and that scene as like super influential for me, like kind of getting me into music and like wanting to play, specifically like into the punk rock scene, because I was also super into like the Fat Records, Epitaph stuff, all the new school punk. That's kind of what really got me into playing in bands is all that kind of stuff. So listening to like MXPX and Slick Shoes and a lot of the other Tooth and Nail stuff that was a big thing for me too.
Yeah, and I liked I think I really liked Five Iron Frenzy, and they were a Christian band. And I mean, I remember, I stopped by the time I was about, because I was raised Catholic and I went to Catholic school, so I kind of was around this stuff all the time. So I started asking questions a little younger. Like I was around 13 when I was like, I think religion's nonsense. It was around 13 where I was like, I don't identify with this stuff anymore.
Right.
But even still, like a lot of the bands, like I was sort of like, well, as long as they're not like, hitting me over the head with a Bible, I don't really care. I like their sound, and half their songs aren't about any type of religious thing anyway. I just, I just know because they mentioned it. So I didn't really care, but yeah. So 2020, let's get to present. What are you hoping for 2020?
I mean, the world not to end, I guess.
I think that's a solid start.
I mean, if we could just let's just set that as the baseline, because we seem to be assaulted on so many fronts with so much absurdity on a day-to-day basis with so many things. For me, obviously I would love for things to calm down with the current pandemic. Doesn't seem like we're headed for a calming of anything with the current announcements of the last couple of days from the administration. So we'll see. I mean, that's horrifying to me. But my wife and I have been self-quarantining for a while. I think you are as well, right?
Yeah. It's the big. I mean, we go on 2 walks a day when we can.
Right.
It's I mean, I guess you've been married a long time. I got married 2 weeks ago.
Congratulations!
Thank you. Awesome. I appreciate that. Thank you. But yeah, we kind of me and my wife have the joke where it's like we've just run the gamut of a marriage, because the beginning of a marriage is when you get married. It doesn't get more beginning than that.
Yeah.
So we got married. And now we're kind of, in a way, you're kind of living like you're 90 years old, like it's time for our daily walk.
Yeah.
We got to get our steps in.
Make sure you cross the street when you see someone coming, so you maintain your 6 feet.
Exactly.
My wife joked that it's like
dinner tonight. I've been making dinner too many nights. You make dinner tonight.
I know, it's ridiculous.
The only thing I'd be going to the library more often, but it's not open, so that'd be the only difference.
What's funny is for me, I mean, things haven't really changed that much for me because I don't really go out at all. I work from home, which I can get into that in a second. My wife works from home some usually. Now she's just all working from home.
Right.
But so I'm actually, so part of your question about 2020 is I'm actually working on a project, have been working on a project with Ryan, our old singer, for a while now. And it started out as, we started working on it in late 17, early 18. And it's actually a full-blown instrumental electronic project. We have both been listening to that kind of stuff for a really long time. And now that the band is done, we're like, we can do a project for fun. That's whatever we want. There's no rules. So we started on that, and it has kind of, I wouldn't say pivoted, but it's kind of taken on some new expansion in terms of our focus, where we also are going to do film scoring, and we actually are starting. I guess we'll see how it goes because it's currently delayed. But we're supposed to start our first indie film soon, actually this month, that we're doing the score for.
Nice.
And then we are also have been doing trailer music as well, which is really fun and crazy, and a world that I was not really aware of until somewhat recently. So we're kind of going to be doing all of these things under the same kind of moniker. And that's kind of what we're focusing on full time in 2020, although, again, just so much uncertainty right now with everything in the whole world being completely shut down. I would hope for there to be some sort of normalcy return to at some point, but there's just no way. I don't know. We just got to take it day by day, I guess.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, politically, are you a Bernie guy, or are you just kind of like?
I am. I'm so sad because I was actually a huge Tulsi guy, and I'm still so bummed and trying to wrap my head around her decision to endorse Biden because it bummed me out big time. I was like, basically, I would vote for Bernie. I'd vote for her. I was pretty open to Andrew Yang for a while. Basically any non-establishment candidate for sure, which is my biggest thing. I really thought that her message resonated by far the best for me, her focus and her priorities, even though she was just being relentlessly smeared by so many people. I just thought that was absurd. And obviously, I do like Bernie. His platform, his ideas, everything makes total sense to me. I voted for him in the primary because I felt like it made sense to vote for him, even though Tulsi was still in the race. I thought, you know what, the establishment is going to try as hard as they can to screw him, so he needs it. So I decided to vote for him as opposed to Tulsi at that time.
Well, I'm with you, man. I think we're all a little shell shocked right now. I mean, I was, I was a Bernie supporter, and I voted for Bernie as well. But I was hoping for a Bernie Tulsi ticket,
as was I,
for a number. I mean, I just think that, obviously not anymore, but like back when things were, when things were initiating, I really thought, her ability to bring in, a lot of different people that are kind of out of the box politically, a lot of independents, a lot of libertarians. Some Republicans too. And Bernie does that as well. It's not like Bernie does that too, but she does it, kind of in like a different kind of,
yes,
like in a different space that he doesn't occupy as much. And between the two of them, I was just like, this ticket would dominate.
Absolutely.
And the fact that she is, even more disliked by the establishment than he is, that was a good thing. That's what he wants in a VP. He needs to pick an outsider. Yep,
she could do all of his dirty work, and it blows my mind because there's, the establishment is like, oh, we need to appeal, we need to build a bigger coalition. It's like, so, but then somehow her appeal to like independents and libertarians and Republicans from the like anti-war veteran thing, that's like a bad thing. Like they try to paint it that way. It's like, well, don't you want someone that more people will vote for? It makes no sense. It's obviously just because she's anti-establishment. It's so stupid.
And they do that all the time. The Democratic establishment, they do something similar to Bernie. They shame Bernie for like they shamed like, oh, some Trump supporter said that they would vote for Bernie second. Like, yeah, that's because people liked his message.
Yeah, for
that's
sure.
Because a lot of people voted for Trump not because they thought he was a nice guy, but because they were so sick of the Beltway. They were like, well, we're going to take a gamble on this clown. And they did, and now they have buyer's remorse because, he didn't deliver on anything. Right. So they're like, gee, I'm going to, I like what this Bernie guy's saying. And then instead of celebrating something like that, the Democratic establishment uses it to smear and shame. Meanwhile, what's their big selling point? Oh, we can't go too far left because we got to appeal to the moderate Republicans.
But the thing is like something that I've kind of realized, and obviously this is like a huge platform of Jimmy's, is like the terms moderate and extreme and left and right, like none of those mean anything anymore, because what you're talking about is moderate means like theoretically the middle, like the most amount of normal, regular people. But if you look at all of the policies that they're talking about, they're like overwhelmingly supported. I mean, look at the exit polling for Medicare for All and obviously other policies that are similar. Everyone wants these things to happen. So then by definition, it's not extreme. Just by the definition of those words, it doesn't make sense at all. It's just that if any of those things happen, then the establishment doesn't get the things they want, which is everything to remain exactly the same, which is just infuriating.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So I guess going forward, like, what's kind of your plan?
I'm still working every day. So like I said, I mentioned with.
Are you guys able to be in a studio together now?
We are. So I have a studio at my house, and he has a studio at his house. He lives fairly close by, and we are both completely quarantining. So just the only thing we do is go to each other's houses, which is basically like as if we were living together.
Sure.
So so we're still working together every day, and what we're working on currently is we're basically getting ready to do, like I had mentioned, the score for this film, and we're kind of just waiting on hearing about that being delayed. But in the meantime, we're also working on trailers, like I had mentioned, and then at some point in the future, we're going to continue working on the actual like original electronic music. So we're kind of working on all those things at the same time, and hoping that things kind of sort of resolve back to a place where there's still an industry where people still want some music in all these different fronts,
Yeah, absolutely. So what is there anything you want to plug at this point, or where can people find out more about you?
So for me, it's funny because there's really we're not releasing music as this artist to the public yet.
Right.
Because just what we're focusing on, there's nothing to release yet. But the project is called Jedha, Jedha, like the holy city from Star Wars. And that's going to be the project for all of these things. It's like we're going to do scoring under that. We're going to do trailers under that. We're going to do electronic music under that. And it's just a matter of when we can finish the electronic record, which probably is going to be a little ways off, but that will definitely be released at some point. And for me personally, I'm probably the most active on Twitter, at Ryan Mendez on Twitter. And I guess that's pretty much it. Really.
Thanks for talking to me, man. I really appreciate it.
Dude, thank you for having me, man.
Absolutely, dude.
Yeah, I really appreciate it.
Right on, man. Cheers.
All right, bye.